Hi there, Prairie Plant Girl here. Today I thought we'd go through the flowers that I'll be sowing in April. This for me is weeks 3 to 6 before my average last frost. And these would be good plants for anyone who has a real cold growing season with their last frost in May sometime. It's a big list. April is a busy flower starting time for me here. So I have my seed cases separated into early and late April. So let's have a look at the early April. So this is generally going to be my 5 to 6 weeks before my average last frost. So one of the first things that I'll be starting in April is marigolds. And I have these, this is the Bonita mix, but really what I mostly have here is just saved seed from growing Bonita mix for years. I don't think I have any of the original seeds left. I've just been saving them for years and they've overflowed into this baggie. So it's really who knows what mix of marigolds. It shows yellow on the package. I don't think I really get yellow. It's mostly reds and kind of striped red yellow that I get anymore, but I like to have them in the garden. They're a good bright pop of color that last well through frost. They hold up to the summer heat, and they're good for attracting beneficial insects into your garden and into your flower beds. And supposedly they might deter some nematodes, though that depends on the variety. And I'm not sure that this is the right variety for that. I think they need to be French marigolds. I'm not sure about that. I might grow these marigolds again. They're labeled as Eskimo variety. They're white with a yellow center according to the package. I found them to be more of a creamy to yellow marigold. And I enjoyed having them for bouquets. They gave me some decent stem length for bouquets and just give you that kind of whitish creamy color that can often just set off a bouquet and just adds a lot of kind of fullness to a bouquet when you're using something like marigolds. So I'll use the marigolds in my vegetable garden because they can fit compactly into little corners and spaces in my vegetable garden, and they do well in there. And it's good to have that pollinator draw. And I'll also use a few of them in my bouquets and things. So I might, if I have room, pop a few just into my flower beds as well, wherever I have some extra space. But that's my marigolds. I'll also be planting globe amaranth again this year. Last year I grew the QIS lilac. And this year I've also picked up some seeds for the QIS orange. I really, really liked these. In fact, I have the QIS lilac as dried flowers. It's unfortunate I'm not out in my greenhouse today because I actually have a nice little bouquet of them sitting out there. But they're really nice flowers for using in flower arrangements. They add great pop of color to the garden, and they dry really, really well with pretty much no effort from you. So I liked this lilac color, but it was a little bit tricky for me personally to put into some of my flower arrangements. I just found in its full fresh look, it was just a little bit much for some of my arrangements, just not quite the right shade of kind of pinky purple. So I just thought I'd try this orange and see how it worked out as well. I'll also be starting asters. Last year I grew the Valkyrie yellow from stems, and I absolutely love these. I enjoyed just watching them unfurl and open in my flower beds, and they worked well in the cut flower arrangements as well. They were just a nice flower to have around even when I wasn't cutting them, but they did really well and stood up to several cuttings throughout the season with decent sized stems for what I'm doing, just as a cutting my own flowers, you know, to give away to friends and family. I don't have a business or anything. So then I also found this Duchess apricot aster when I was on stems this year, and so I thought I'd give it a try, just to get a few different shades of aster going. And then when I was on the Vessi site, I found this Chrysantella flamingo at sunset aster. It says it's a peachy pink, calming peachy pink. So yellow, pink, and apricot should make some beautiful combinations with some of the other plants that I have that I'm going to be growing this year. Now, one of, I think, the most popular that kind of cut flowers and just general flowers for people to have in their garden, in my opinion, I don't know, I might be wrong, is zinnias. And I don't know if you can see all these packages I'm picking up here. I think I have a lot of zinnias. Let's see, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Now, oh no, there's still seed in this one too. So 9, I think I counted there. So let's just go through them real quick. If you're not familiar with zinnias, they're a good, strong, structured, large flower. They come in a few different shapes. You can get kind of cactus shaped flowers. You can get kind of ball shaped flowers. You can get just a more, I don't know, open petaled flower. They come in a lot of, you can get singles and doubles. So there's a lot to choose from, and almost every color in the rainbow. I don't think there's blue or, yeah, there's kind of purples, but I don't think there's blue zinnias, but otherwise I think you can get them in every single color you could imagine. The seed racks are finally coming out in the stores around here. It's a new year. I love it. The seeds are out. So I was out last night and I found the double, what is it called? California Double Giant and the berry tart mix. I'd looked at these online, but Mackenzie's, I don't feel like getting their seeds shipped is worth the price unless you're making a huge shipment. Their shipping fees are quite high. So I just waited, and luckily those came out on the seed racks. So anyways, what else did I pick up? Yes, that's all I picked up for zinnia seeds last night. But then I have Queenie Lime Orange. I have 2 packs of those, so that was part of the 9 count, would have been 2 of those. Cinderella Purple, Zahara Mix. This feels empty, but I think there's seeds in it. Just a few of those left. California Double Giant. So that's the same as the one I got from Mackenzie's, but the one I had already from previous years is almost empty. So that's another duplicate that I had. This is just some saved seed, and I don't have it labeled. They'll have all just cross-pollinated, and it's whatever I get. Then I have Zahara Raspberry Lemonade Mix and California Giant. So this, I don't believe, is the double giants. I think these are just single, if I remember correctly. But very nice. If I was going to grow one zinnia, I think it would be the California Giants or the double giants. They grow really well. They give you nice long stems. They are absolutely prolific in their flowering. Zinnias are one of those plants that the more you cut, the more they're going to flower for you. So don't be afraid to cut those flowers. Cut them off of their heads, because they're going to grow more and reward you for it. But I just find in my climate anyways that the California Giant zinnias grow the best. And I've heard that from other flower growers as well. Even like flower farmers that are selling their bouquets really seem to like them. So that's a great zinnia if you're just getting into cut flowers or just want some nice flowers in your garden. And zinnias are another one that I quite often will pop a few into my vegetable garden. Last year I didn't put very many flowers in my vegetable garden, and I really regretted that decision as the season went on. I enjoy seeing the flowers when I'm out working in with the vegetables, and I do think they bring the pollinators in as well. So pop a few in when you have room. And zinnias are a fairly small plant that you can pop a few in here and there between the rows, and they'll do well for you. So the next thing I'll be starting is Strawflowers. And I think I just found this one. Yeah, I just found this one Strawflower, at least that I was willing. I mean, there's lots of variety out there, but you have to be willing to pay for them. And sometimes they can get pretty expensive, especially more and more as cut flowers are becoming popular. And flowers like this that are great as a cut flower and as a dried flower, they're going up in price. But often I find that the dollar stores and some of the cheaper seed racks will have just some more generic straw flowers on their racks when they start to come out. I didn't see any last night, but I'll keep an eye out and get some more. But this is Silvery Rose straw flower. A lot of the ones that you can get, that I find anyways here, that you can get just in the kind of the cheapy packs are quite often like kind of yellows and oranges or reds. And this, I believe, is kind of a pinky tone, if I remember correctly. So I thought I would pick that one up. Now, last year I grew Cleome, and I had tried for years to grow Cleome. I was really excited when it grew. I was really excited to get in the ground. I didn't love it, and I'm not going to be growing it again this year. I just didn't think for the space it took and the work it took to get it growing, because I did have trouble getting it going. I just didn't love it. Now this is Spider Queen. This is from the Dollar Tree, actually, these seeds. So maybe it's the variety, and maybe there's better varieties out there, but it just wasn't worth it to me, and I didn't see it bringing in a ton of pollinators like it's supposed to do. So it's just not for me. But what I will be growing again is Rudbeckia. And let me just make sure that these are the only Rudbeckia I have here. So this year I'm going to do Rudbeckia Prairie Sun and Rudbeckia Denver Daisy. So I've grown Cherry Brandy in the past, but it gets, I find almost like it almost looks old before the flowers are old, if that makes sense. Like it just has almost like a dusty, I don't know. I just don't care for the look of it as it grows throughout the season. And I just didn't feel it was worth taking up the space, either for just starting the seeds or for having in my flower garden. So I decided to go without it this year, but I am going to keep with the Prairie Sun. I love, love, love the Prairie Sun. And it seems to take on slightly different forms as it grows. Sometimes it's almost more open between the petals, and I think that just depends on how much sunlight these different plants were getting, maybe, or how much water. I'm not sure what it was, but some were really tight, compact. The petals were really tight together. It looked like a really full flower, and I think both looked really interesting, and I liked using them in cut flower arrangements and just having in my garden. And another one that I found that when I cut it, it seemed to just keep replenishing, so that was a good one. And then I found this Denver Daisy, which is yellow dabbed with red, and it just looked like a really fun flower to have, and it looked like all the flowers will look just a little bit different as they grow because of the coloring in them. And so I thought this would be a fun one to go with. The Rudbeckia could be a perennial, and often is, but the varieties that I mentioned here, the Cherry Brandy and the Prairie Sun, and I believe the Denver Daisy as well, if I remember correctly, were all listed to be perennial to zone like 4 or 5 or something, and I'm in zone 3, so probably not going to have any of those come back for me, though they may have dropped seeds, and I may get some that way. Another one that I have here is Gaillardia, and it's a perennial, and I can't remember if it's perennial to my zone. Yes, this one says right on the back of it. So this one is perennial from zones 3 to 9. So if I get this going, I should be able to have some Gaillardia apricot, what did I say it was? Arizona apricot in my yard for years after this. So I'll get it started. Gaillardia is a great flower. It's actually a native plant. You may have heard of it as blanket flower. But this one just has a little bit more refined, we'll say, look to it than some of the more native varieties. And this one is supposed to be good as a cut flower. So I've never used it as that before, but it's supposed to work well for that. And that's what I'm hoping to use it for in those apricot tones. So last year was the first time I'd grown Amaranth, and I grew Autumn's Touch. A great flower. I really enjoyed it. I don't know if you really want to call it a flower. Technically it is, but the flower heads are kind of these spiky things, and they're a little bit longer in kind of brownish, bronzy kind of tones that kind of hang down. It took a long time to grow, and I think maybe I didn't have them. I kind of popped them around a few different spots of my yard, and just to see how they would do in different areas. I did find that Amaranth is greedy for water, and it does not want to dry out. It will perk back up if it dries out, but man, it looks dead as soon as it dries out. So it's not something that you want to let dry out in an area where people are going to be able to see it. But it does look nice in a flower arrangement. It just gives you that little kind of pop of just something different, a little bit whimsical. You know, it has that kind of flowiness to it because the flower head kind of drapes. So it is a nice one to have. And then I purchased this year Red Spike, which is a shorter flower head, but a spike as well. It just won't get that same drape to it. And I'm going to try this one as well and see. I think it'd be nice to have, especially at the end of the season, to have those reds and the browns, kind of those autumnal tones that can look really nice, especially with things like your sunflowers and your Gaillardia and your Rudbeckia. Those things all look really nice at the end of the year. Phacelia was again another one that I grew for the first time last year, and I'll definitely be growing it again this year. I had it in a little bit of a shaded area of my yard. I would say it was getting part sun at most, and it still did quite well. You might know this plant as Bee's Friend, and it has these little purple kind of flower stalks that come out of it. The bees and pollinators do seem to absolutely love it. Mine kind of faded away into the background as the heat came on in the summer, but I don't know if that's because of the heat or because it got just overgrown where it was and wasn't able to get the sun that it needed. So I'll try it in a different spot this year and see how it does for that. This is also one that is a good cut flower. You should be aware that it needs darkness to germinate. So when you're sowing it, make sure that it is covered with soil or in a dark space to get it germinated. Calendula is another favorite for me to have in my garden, and these are Candyman Orange and Victoria Sunset, and they just shone. The Candyman Orange, if you're gonna buy one of these, Candyman Orange, if you want that pop of orange in your garden that, I don't know, it's just so bright and fun to see it. I honestly didn't use these much for cut flowers. They are a bit of an aphid attractor, calendula, so it kind of works to kind of draw away some of those less desirables away from your other plants. But they still looked good even if they had aphids on them, and they're just so bright and cheery. I love calendula. I'm gonna put these two together. They're not the same thing, but I don't know if it's just me. I feel like they have very similar look to them, and they grow about the same time, kind of similar properties, but I do grow them both. Iberis or Candytuft is the one, and the other one is Alyssum. So this one is a carpet of snow, the Alyssum, and this one is just called Umbellata Mixed Colors. So these are both early season, fairly cold tolerant plants that you can get going and put out early in your garden, and they just keep going for you. They can be prone to things like flea beetles. You have to kind of protect them when they're young just to keep them from getting decimated. Once they got larger, they seem to be fine and hold their own, but until they got some size to them, the flea beetles I've found in the past will just take them out on you overnight. Believe it or not, that was just one of my seed packs for April. I almost forgot Nigella. The reason I forgot about these is because I will do a second sowing of Nigella in April. Right around the second week of April, I will do a second sowing of Nigella. I will do another one in March, about 2 weeks before that. So they were in a different container, but you don't want to forget about your Nigella if you want to do subsequent sowings. You don't have to do subsequent sowings. Mine lasted quite well without, but I'm gonna try because they do recommend it and see how it goes for me as long as I remember this year. It gets really pretty little blue flowers, almost like a bachelor's button, but much, much prettier in my opinion. And then it gets these beautiful big seed heads. If you want to know more about what I'm sowing in March, check out this video here, and I'll leave a link for it below as well. For the second half of April, let's have a look at what I'll be sowing. I'm still not sure if I'm going to be planting this year, but I'm going to include it in this video because this is the time you would plant it. It's Nemophilla. I have seen this in other people's gardens and I've just loved it. And I don't know if it just gets lost in my garden or if I'm not putting it in the right spot in my garden. I just have not found that I'm getting the same effect with it as I've seen others do. I might try it this year in the hanging baskets that I have on my deck and see if maybe that's a space where they would do their thing. But I haven't found, like, putting it in the ground, for me it just seems to just get lost in the chaos. So that's not working for me. Cosmos are something that you can wait and direct seed out in your garden once things warm up a little bit, right around that last frost date. Some people say to wait and plant them after your last frost date, but if the soil is warm and it's not too wet and mucky or anything, then I think you can always plant them just right around that last frost date and they're fine. But I do like to start some indoors just to get a little bit of a head start because we have a short season here. So I have Apricot Lemonade, Sensation Mix. Let's see, this is Giant Single Blooms in colors of white, pink, and deep crimson. I don't think the stems tell you the colors. No, they don't have as much information on their packs. They do have the growing information, so that's really what's important. Xanthos. Xanthos is a nice Cosmo. It's a yellow. It's a really dainty little Cosmo, and I really like having it. Just, it can really lend an airiness to a bouquet. The other two are new to me this year. Double Click is just a mix, I believe. I think I know, I've grown it for years. But I believe this is just a mix of kind of pastel colors and double. Sometimes this grows really well for me, sometimes it doesn't. I don't know what I'm doing the years it doesn't grow well. And then Candy Stripe. And this one is kind of like pink and white striped Cosmos. I believe they're singles. And they're, again, just a nice little pop of color. I like these more in the yard than in bouquets, but they do work in bouquets. Now I have a couple of poppies. I have a whole bunch of poppy seed. The seed is so easy to save from poppies, and I just grab it out of all the different varieties I have, and here it is. And then I have this is called Mikado California Poppy, and this was just a free gift that came with my order this year, so we'll try it out. I'll try and put on the screen what color it is, because I'm not sure, but I think this being the California Poppy is probably what I have a lot of in my yard already, which is just a mix of yellows and oranges and reds. If I'm wrong on that, and also like kind of a lower growing, if I'm wrong on that, I'll put it on the screen. I think that's what it is. And then this is Ladybird, which, if I remember correctly, is a red flower with a dark center. And I planted these last year, and I had some, but I think this is supposed to be a largish poppy, and mine were really tiny and dainty, so I think I just didn't get them in a spot with enough sun. That happens sometimes, because lots of times with my poppies, I will just put them, and I'll go out kind of at the end of winter when the snow is just kind of starting to melt down enough where I don't have like 1 to 3 feet of snow in my flower beds. And then I will go and I'll just sprinkle the seed in areas where I kind of think it would be nice to have a few poppies pop up now and then. And that's all I do, usually just start them. I don't usually put them in seed trays and start them inside. I just can't be bothered with that for them. And that usually works well, as long as I pick a spot where it's not going to be water running through as the melt happens and the seeds are getting washed away. I find just sprinkling them on the ground for what I want works well. If you want to be very precise in where your poppies are going, you can start them inside or just direct sow them around your last frost. So here is some African daisy seeds. Let me see if I can get the package out now. As you might guess, I have saved these seeds, and they save quite well. These are in the same kind of family, I believe, as Osteospermum, which I love to grow, and I usually start in March. And these I just start a little bit later, but you see that they're like kind of a bright yellow on the outside, kind of moving to an orange on the inside flower. Very pretty, and I have lots of seed, and so I'll just start a few. You can actually direct sow these as well, but they can take a bit of time to get going. They're a heat-loving plant, so you need to wait a little bit if you're going to direct sow them. But they can easily be started indoors right around that, like 4 weeks before your average last frost, and get some really pretty flowers. A new one I'm going to be trying this year is this firecracker vine, or Spanish flag. It's supposed to attract lots of pollinators and hummingbirds, and it's supposed to be a vine that will grow and do well even in my short season climate. These are supposed to get up to 5 meters tall, so I'll be popping them on a trellis somewhere and hopefully getting some to grow well for me. Now these, I believe, are supposed to be direct sown. I will probably try to start a few in peat pots in my greenhouse. But it says to start them as soon as the soil can be worked in the spring, which is before your first frost. Another one that you can sow that way, that as soon as the soil can be worked, which is before your first frost, before your last frost, is sweet peas. And that's how I love to sow my sweet peas. And I don't bother with the soaking and the fiddling around with them anymore. I just go out once the soil is workable. And all that means is it's not sopping wet and gonna like just mush up anymore, and it's not frozen anymore. So when you can get in there and dig around and it doesn't just like form a big mud ball, your soil is workable. Put your seeds in the ground. It feels really wrong, but you can do that. sow. Get that going. You can also do that with your Gladiolus corms. You don't need to start them in the house and have them taking up space and all these little trays and things. You don't need to pre-soak them and pre-sprout them. Just pop them in the soil when it's workable. Okay, a couple weeks before your average last frost, put your Gladiolus in the ground, or at least start a few that way. You know, they're gonna come up. Here's Nasturtiums, and I have Roomba, I'm not sure how to say that, but it's just a mix, I believe, of like oranges and yellows. Does it say on here? Red and peach hues, that's what it says. There's semi-double blossoms. Nasturtiums are one of those things that are edible. They're an edible flower, so you can use them. They're kind of peppery, kind of, I don't know. I don't care for the taste of them, but they look pretty if you want to garnish. There's 2 packs of these because one's almost empty. And then I have a little bit of Empress of India. I think these are a dark purple, but I can't remember. There's like, seriously, like maybe 3 seeds left in here. And then I have Bachelor's buttons. I have a love-hate with Bachelor's buttons. They're great for a little filler when you need a little filler, but they get kind of leggy and lanky. And really, when you're cutting them for cut flowers, they they have so much frilly greenery on them. They do it takes a lot of time to clean them, which can be kind of a pain. But I'm not doing, like I said, I'm not selling dozens of bouquets or anything. I'm not selling any. So to clean a few of these stems when I need a few flowers and nothing else is flowering, it's worth it. And I really like this, what is it called? The Classic Romance mix. So this is kind of your standard general mix that you get at the store. It's just double mixed colors. This Classic Romance, beautiful, like pinks and mauves and whites. Very pretty, very dainty looking. But this one here will give you some of those blues and purples that can be nice to add into a bouquet as well and are hard to find in the garden. That's the flowers I'll be sowing in April. Like I said, it's a lot. But there's so many exciting flowers that I want to get started. And like I said, there's a few that you could direct sow. Your zinnias, you could direct sow right around your last frost date. Your cosmos, you can direct sow. Oh, I didn't even get into my sunflowers. Oh my goodness. I have a whole separate package of sunflowers, but those will be sown in April. I think I will make a separate video maybe for my sunflowers though, because there's a lot. But those could also be direct sown if you have a little bit longer season. I just find that those plants, if you direct sow them, you're waiting until the middle to the end of the season before you're seeing a lot of flowers. Whereas if you just start them those few weeks before your average last frost date, they can give you more flower time in my experience anyways. And when you're dealing with a short season, you want as many of those flowers blooming for as long as you can. Gladiolus, direct sow those as soon as the soil is workable. That's a few weeks before your average last frost date usually. Sweet peas, same thing. The Spanish flag, you're supposed to direct sow it as soon as that soil can be worked. So just wait until you can get that soil and work it with your fingers or your hand tools or whatever you like there and get them in there that way. If you want to just direct sow your nasturtiums, maybe wait until May. Otherwise, start them inside in the end of April. And the Bachelor's buttons too. I mean, you can start them from seed early, but you can just direct sow them the end of April, and I find that works really well for me. So I would do that as well. They're just, I mean, they come up from seed. They're going to spread by seed. If you grew them any year before, you have them in your garden probably. They grow by seed very, very easily. You can winter sow those as well. So yeah, that's my my thoughts on starting these seeds and when you should do it. So hopefully you enjoyed this. Hopefully you found it informative, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.